If you were fixing your bra straps, fussing with wires, or battling your bra during this podcast, stop right now. You'll want to hear this. Those bra problems, those problems you thought you had to live with, Third Love has solved them. Their bras make it easy to get what you want, whether it's ultimate cleavage, a smooth look, or stopping your shirt buttons from pulling. With over 60 sizes, including half cups you won't find anywhere else, you'll never be stuck between two sizes that don't fit. So stop settling for bad bras. Now's the time to treat yourself and get your problem solved. Save $15 on your first order with code podcast15 at thirdlove.com.
Two sisters, one a respected TV producer, the other was disabled, nearly blind and deaf. Jill and Wendy Blackstone lived together, rescued dogs together.
Jill was her best friend, her sister, her everything.
But the sister bond was broken the day Wendy and 3 rescue dogs were found dead in a garage next to a toppled-over barbecue grill. Jill said accidental carbon monoxide poisoning killed her sister and the dogs. Detectives don't believe her.
Police arrested Jill Blackstone for the murder of her sister.
Investigators think it was staged to look like an accident.
So what happened? A source has come forward with evidence never made public before, revealing the dark story of why Wendy Blackstone really died.
Jill was a good producer. There's no doubt about that. But would she produce murder is the question.
Season 2 of Bad Bad Thing, The Blackstone Sisters, available October 4th, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 332 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, decompressing a little bit from Crime Con. It was a lot of fun.
It was a blast.
The hotel was freaking huge.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people there, but we got to meet a lot of friends that we've known for a long time and a lot of new friends.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was popping.
It was. And, before we give our shout outs, I just saw where the remains of Suzanne Morphew have been found and identified. So
great news.
Well, it gives the family some information, but also hopefully it's the kickstart of leading the investigation to where it needs to get to.
Yeah. Let's hope it gets there.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Robin Bueller.
Bueller? Anybody?
Anyone?
Bueller?
Tanya Collette.
Hey, Collette.
Brandy Garcia.
What's going on, Garcia?
Addicted to Ferrets.
Hey, Ferrets.
Christy Kemp.
What's going on, Kemp?
Celine DeMonte.
Celine.
Lachlan.
Hey, Lachlan.
Amanda Kirby.
What's going on, Amanda?
Granny Pammy jumped out at our highest level.
Everybody needs some granny.
I don't know if that came out exactly the way you thought it was going to, but I'm leaving that in because it cracked me up.
Yeah.
Pamela Geary jumped out at our highest level. It's still cracking me up.
Hi, Pamela.
Ron Steele.
Hey, Ron.
Susanna Joy.
What's going on, Joy?
Savannah Thomas.
Hey, Savannah.
Kaylin Saros.
Well, thank you, Saros.
Joycey.
What's up, Joycey?
And Laura Andrews.
Well, thank you, Laura.
All right. And if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Melissa Duke.
Hey, appreciate that, Melissa.
Yeah, appreciate the new support, the continued support on Patreon. And on PayPal, we had some great donations from Elizabeth Massey.
Hey, Massey.
And Brado Cabrera is shouting out happy birthday, Rue, from Tigger.
All right, Cabrera, happy birthday, Rue. That was a mouthful, wasn't it? For me.
Yep. For you and Granny. Gibbs, we have a lot out right now. On Saturday night, we dropped a brand new Patreon episode on the murder of 18-year-old Stacy Hanna. And this case involves a love triangle and some girls who said they were trying to teach Stacy a lesson, and it went horribly wrong.
Way too far. Should never even start it.
No.
Yeah.
And
it's sickening.
It was rough. It was a very rough murder. And then on TCAT, we're talking about Tia Skinner and the murder of Paul Skinner and the attempted murder on Mara Skinner inside their home in Michigan by two men. The thing that really struck me about this one was that the attack was orchestrated by their adopted daughter, Tia.
Yeah. Just shows you that you never know.
You never do.
Who's in the next room.
Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I'm ready.
We're talking about the disappearance of Brandon Swanson. Brandon Swanson went missing after he crashed his car into a ditch on his way home from a party. He called his parents for help, but the phone call ended suddenly when something seemed to surprise or frighten Brandon. 15 years later, he's not been found. The authorities are unable to rule out an accident or foul play due to a lack of evidence in his case. And I'm sure we'll talk about it more, but just think about his parents getting this call. He's obviously going to be in distress. He's asking for help. And then all of a sudden the call ends. I mean, what parent can't put themselves in that position and think how horrifying that would be?
Certainly devastating.
Brandon Swanson was born on January 30th, 1989. He was 19 years old when he went missing. His parents are Brian and Annette Swanson, and he has a younger sister. Brandon lived with his parents in Marshall, Minnesota. He graduated high school in 2007. He spent a year studying wind energy at Minnesota West Community College in Canby. Brandon had a part-time job at the Hy-Vee food store, and he wanted to transfer to Iowa Western Community College to study science.
Wind energy is pretty interesting.
Well, it seems like it'd be a really good field to go into even now, but especially back when, you think 2007.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds to me like he was a bright guy, wanted to go into science. That was never really my forte. Science.
No.
I was more of a history, political science, social studies. That was more my bag.
Yeah. I mean, I excelled in science, but I excelled in everything.
Sure.
So,
sure.
At a young age.
And
sure.
Still do.
And still do.
I mean, you have the vocabulary of a 242-year-old man.
Exactly.
It's funny that you thought that was a compliment. But
I know.
No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Annette Swanson told the St. Cloud Times that Brandon was a kind person who believed in doing the right thing. As far as anyone knows, he was a good person, wasn't involved in any criminal activity, and he didn't associate with dangerous people. So why is it important that we talk about things like this? Is it important that he was a good person? Maybe not so much. If you're doing some things that you shouldn't be and you go missing,
right?
It's still a tragedy.
Sure it is.
It's still heartbreaking. But I do think it's important when you talk about a disappearance case. Was this person in a dangerous line of work? Did they associate themselves with dangerous types of individuals? Because that could potentially lead you down a certain path.
Absolutely, it could.
If it's known that those elements exist. We're saying if he did, nobody knew about it. So it kind of takes some of that off the table unless some evidence were to come out that, he was buying drugs from someone or he was associating with this person or that person that could have got him caught up in some type of trouble.
I mean, if I went missing,
I would have nowhere to start.
Yeah.
Because there's a myriad of people who've been looking for you under all of your assumed names, some for reasons of legitimate business, some for your 3-letter agency type stuff. Who knows who it could be if somebody abducted you?
Did you find it interesting when we were at CrimeCon how I checked into the hotel?
You mean the name you used?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting.
I came up with that pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, it's not the fact that you came up with it quickly. It's the fact that you had all the documents to back it up. That's the part that scared me. Anybody can make up a name, but when you produce a passport, a valid driver's license in that name, that scared me a little.
That portable printer, it does a lot.
Brandon went to class on May 13th, 2008. It was actually the last day of classes for that semester. He drove home after school and spoke with his mother. Brian was in St. Cloud taking a class, so he didn't see Brandon before he left home again. Annette said that Brandon came in to say goodbye to her. She told the St. Cloud Times, "I said the things I normally say to him. See you later. Be safe." And how many times have we talked about on Unsolved? These routine, everyday conversations that a person has with a family member.
Right. Just everyday conversation.
Yes. But it ultimately turns out to be either the last or one of the last conversations that they ever have. And so, that gets ingrained. You know that they're going to remember those words they said forever. But when you don't think about it, because you have no idea what's going to happen, you say the things you always say.
Yeah. In this case, see you later. Be safe.
Brandon went out with friends that evening to celebrate the end of the semester. He also attended a farewell party for a friend. He was driving his Chevy Lumina that night. Did you ever have a Chevy Lumina?
I never had a Chevy Lumina.
One time the Lumina was like the NASCAR car.
Yeah.
You know how they change models over the years? And I think my mother-in-law had one. It was a pretty good car.
One of the cars that uses the Pacer?
No, what the actual race cars are based on.
Yeah.
Like if you run a Chevy, it's based on some model.
Yeah.
If you run a Toyota, it's based on something.
Did it have a 442 in it?
No, I'm sure it had something much bigger than that. I don't know what NASCAR cars have in it, but Brandon first went to a party in Lind, which was about 7 miles from his home. He drove to Canby for another party. Now, there was alcohol at both parties, but Brandon's friends told the police he didn't seem drunk when he left the second party in Canby. According to local news outlet KSTP TV, some witnesses said Brandon had a shot of whiskey.
Well, a shot of whiskey, I don't think it's going to impair you too bad to drive. One shot.
Well, it all depends on when you have the shot, how many hours, there's a formula, right?
What kind of food you had.
How much food you've had. I mean, you shouldn't drink and drive. We all know that. Right. But, can you have a shot of whiskey when you get there and then drive home 3 hours later? I would say most people can, and their blood alcohol level would be below the limit. Now, I'm no expert because I don't drink. So
well, that's true. You do not.
Makes it tough on me. Brandon left the party after midnight on May 14th, 2008 with the intention to head home. The news site Inform described the route from Canby to Brandon's home in Marshall as a 35-mile straight shot on Minnesota State Highway 68. Brandon had made this drive many times because he commuted to school. And you think about this term, straight shot. Your drive from your place to mine is what I would call a pretty straight shot.
Yeah, pretty much a straight shot.
Right down the highway.
About 30 miles.
For unknown reasons, Brandon did not take Highway 68 that night. He chose to drive down back roads instead, some of which were unpaved gravel roads. Annette later told KSTP TV that she didn't know why Brandon would choose to do this. Now, I don't know why he would choose to do this either. One thing that did enter my mind is if he was impaired, would he want to stay maybe on the back roads where potentially there would be less police?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable statement.
I'm not saying he was impaired. I'm just saying if someone was, they might make that decision.
Sure. To avoid running into any checkpoints.
At around 1 a.m., Brandon drove into a ditch on a gravel road and couldn't get his car out. At first, he tried to call some friends for help, but no one was answering. At 1:54 a.m., he called his parents to ask for a ride.
So maybe this is where we have to look at, was he intoxicated? By taking the back roads and then driving into a ditch off the gravel road.
Yeah, I mean, you could see why people would ask that question or hypothesize that possibly he was intoxicated. You know, when you think about what did people see at the party? Okay, some people said they saw him take a shot of whiskey. Well, what if he was out of their sight and then he drank a couple of beers and then he had a glass of wine? You just don't know what people have had because you're probably not next to them the entire time.
Yeah, you're not monitoring them.
But let's also talk about this, phone call that his parents are receiving at almost 2:00 in the morning. Right. You're going to be startled a little bit.
Sure.
But it's your child. And so they say they need your help. You're going to spring into action. Brandon told his parents he wasn't injured. And both Brian and Annette said that he sounded coherent during their conversation. Brandon told them he was near the city of Lind, which is southwest of Marshall.
Well, it's good he sounded coherent. It probably sounded to them that maybe he didn't drink that night or he was sober by that time.
Yeah. I'm not saying that parents would always be able to tell, but I do think a lot of parents would. If he's slurring his words, if he, just doesn't sound the way he normally sounds. But again, we just don't know. Brandon Swanson told CNN, we got in the pickup to go to the spot where he felt he was. Brian said he believed Brandon was about 10 minutes from home and that Brandon was absolutely positive he knew where he was. However, when Brian and Annette got there, they didn't see Brandon's car or Brandon. They turned around and started flashing their lights, telling Brandon over the phone what they were doing. They could hear Brandon doing the same thing in his vehicle, but they couldn't see the car lights anywhere around them. Brandon asked his parents, "Don't you see me?" At this point, everyone started getting frustrated. Annette said that Brandon hung up on her, so she called him back and apologized. Brandon said he could see lights off in the distance, which he thought was the city of Lind. He told his dad he was going to walk into town and that they could pick him up at a bar and grill called the Linwood. Brandon was supposed to be waiting in the parking lot. So, let's break down this situation. He thinks he knows where he is. He's pretty sure he knows where he is.
Yeah, sounds pretty confident.
But they go there and he's not there. What really grabbed me was, so both of them are flashing their headlights. And at one point he asked his parents, "Don't you see me?"
Yeah.
Almost as if he thought they were close or he saw something. I don't know. That kind of caught my attention.
Yeah, I'm sure he's like, I'm flicking my light so many times. How can you not see me?
Yeah. And they're doing the same thing. So he makes this decision that he's going to walk to a bar and grill. Brian drove home to drop Annette off and then went out to look for Brandon. The second phone call with Brandon started at 2:23 a.m., according to Minnesota's Unsolved Cases. As Brandon walked, he described his surroundings to his dad. He said he decided to take a shortcut through some fields and was walking along a fence, still heading towards the city lights. He also talked about seeing gravel roads and hearing running water in the distance. Now, I don't know when the first kind of GPS locator app came about on the smartphones. There were smartphones out in 2007, right? Didn't the first iPhone come out in like 2004 or 5, something like that?
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
But I don't know when GPS really played a factor in some of these apps. Today, this would probably be a pretty easy find. I would just open up the app. I could see exactly where one of my daughters was and just follow along to that location. Brandon and his dad were on the phone for 47 minutes. At 3:10 a.m., Brandon suddenly shouted out, "Oh shit," and the line went dead. Brandon Swanson was quoted as saying, "There was nothing after that." Annette wasn't present during this phone call, but she described what Brian heard to KSTP TV, saying, "It sounded like the phone fell. And as it fell, we could hear him say, 'Oh, what did that mean? Did he fall into a ditch? Did he fall into the river?' We don't know."
And as a parent, the dad, you want to spring into action, right? Like, I got to go find my kid. What happened? But you don't even know where he's at.
Well, I think it's at that point, right, that the panic meter rises. Because, in the beginning, they're talking on the phone. He thinks he knows where he's at. They don't find him, but he has a plan. I don't know that the panic was all that high because Annette gets dropped off. Brian is just going to go pick him up. Still, everything seems pretty routine other than the fact that it's like 2-something in the morning.
Yeah.
But in this last phone call, you have the, oh shit, you have the sounds, and then the phone call just ends. And then obviously he's not picking up. That's when the panic meter starts to rise. Brian called Brandon 5 to 6 times, but he didn't answer. The Swansons and Brandon's friends looked for him all night, checking dirt roads and farms, but they couldn't find him. At 6:30 a.m., Annette reported Brandon missing to the Lynn Police Department. Officers were unable to find Brandon during the initial search. They issued a county-wide request to expand the search, but according to CNN, the response was delayed because the police noted it was not abnormal for someone Brandon's age to stay out all night.
I get that, but he actually called his parents and said, hey, this happened, come get me. Wasn't like he was trying to avoid coming home.
Yeah, and this kind of thinking has changed over the years. You and I have talked about it in many different cases. I think here, though, you're exactly right. Don't you have to take the circumstances of the situation into account when you're weighing whether or not this is just an adult who chooses to stay out all night and has the right to versus someone who calls his mom and dad and says, hey, my car's stuck. I'm in a little bit of trouble. Can you come get me?
Right.
To me, and then you've got the phone call dropping and him not answering. You put those circumstances together, and I don't know how you can say that this is someone who just chose to stay out all night, right, and we're not really going to do anything. Yeah. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
It doesn't.
It's almost like, throughout the years, sometimes the police have had these kind of standard responses, whether or not they fit the situation and the circumstances. And you would like for them, and I think maybe they do more now, but you would like for them to look at the circumstances, kind of evaluate it on a case-by-case basis a little bit more than just giving these kind of standard responses. It used to be, well, you got to wait 48 hours, or you got to do this, or you got to do that. This person's an adult. They'll show up tomorrow. Don't worry. According to Annette, one officer said that someone Brandon's age had a right to be missing.
Oh, man. How do you say that to the mom?
It's not wrong, but again, if you take all the circumstances into account, then you're right. How do you say that to someone's mother who has just told you, here's all the things that happened?
Yeah.
That doesn't make a lot of sense. Annette also told the Star Tribune, I knew it was wrong. I know Brandon. I'm his mother, and I knew something was horribly wrong. ATCAT fans, do you love the convenience of getting what you want right to your door? Well, who doesn't? I do. My family's been using DoorDash for a number of years. Now, with DoorDash grocery delivery, you can stock up for the week or order last-minute cravings conveniently. You've trusted DoorDash to deliver your restaurant favorites, and now you can get grocery delivery that actually delivers too. With thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you'll find the best in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with each and every order. You'll get exactly what you ordered, or they will make it right. So all you have to do is sit back and enjoy quality groceries just like you picked them yourself. Want even more value? You can save on all your grocery and restaurant favorites with a $0 delivery fee on all eligible orders with a Dash Pass membership. So in short, DoorDash delivers groceries exactly how you want it. Get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to a $20 value when you use code TrueCrime at checkout. Limited time offer, terms apply. That's 50% off, up to $20, no minimum subtotal, and 0 delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter code TrueCrime. Don't forget, that's code TrueCrime for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. Angie's List is now Angie, the home to skilled neighborhood professionals. Angie is your home for everything home, and they've made it easier than ever to connect with skilled professionals to get all your home projects done well. If you own a home, you know how much work it can take, whether it's everyday maintenance and repairs or making dream projects a reality. It can be hard just to know where to start, but now all you need to do is Angie that and find a skilled local pro who will deliver the quality and expertise you need. Angie has over 20 years of home service experience, and they've combined it with new tools to simplify the whole process. Bring them your project online or with the Angie app. Answer a few questions, and Angie can handle the rest from start to finish, or help you compare quotes from multiple pros and connect instantly. And all of that means you can take care of just about any home project in just a few taps, because when it comes to getting the most out of your home, you can do this when you Angie that. Download the free Angie mobile app today or visit Angie.com. That's ANGI.com. On Wednesday, May 14th, the search was focused near the city of Lynn, but the search area shifted when Brandon's cell phone company traced his phone to a cell tower 20 miles away from Lynn, near the Lyon and Lincoln County line. At 12:30 p.m., Brandon's car was found 25 miles from Lynn and 20 miles northwest of Marshall, on the outskirts of Taunton and Porter. It was found near the Lyon and Lincoln County lines, about 1.5 miles north of Highway 68. And just as Brandon had described, his car was found in a ditch. The police didn't find his car keys. No alcohol or drugs were found in the vehicle. There was no blood or other signs of a struggle. So my first thought is that he was wrong about exactly where he was.
Yes.
He thought he knew, but he was off by quite a way.
Which, I mean, doesn't make his parents feel any better, right?
No.
But at least they know why they couldn't see him and he couldn't see them. And when his dad went looking for him, he was never going to be able to find him.
No, because he wasn't heading where he told his dad he thought he was. But let's face it, he wasn't driving down Main Street. You know, he's on back roads, gravel roads, which there might be a lot of them in this area. And the tree lines and the farms and whatever's out there, they may look similar. So it might have been pretty easy to get mixed up. Lincoln County Sheriff Jack Vizecki told CNN it was off the side of a field approach and the vehicle was hung up. It's sort of a sharp incline, nothing major, but enough that a car would get hung up. So the wheels were too high off the ground to get any traction. Investigators couldn't figure out which direction Brandon went because the ditch was grassy and the road was gravel, meaning he didn't leave any footprints when he got out.
I just think about how he was only 1.5 miles away from Highway 68 if he knew which way to go to get there, if he even knew that was that close.
Yeah, I don't know if he did. And let's not forget, right, Highway 68 was the road that he could have taken as a straight shot to get him home.
Right.
But for whatever reason, he chose the back road. Search dogs led the police to the woods by the bank of the nearby Yellow Medicine River, which is up to 15 feet deep in some spots. At the time Brandon went missing, the water was high and fast moving.
And that's scary because if you slide into there, you're probably not going to get out. You know, high water, moving fast. You could get caught underneath the current, not able to resurface. There's so many different variables in those rivers like that.
Well, and my other thought was that if he did go into the water, where would he ultimately end up? You know, how far could his body have traveled?
Yeah. Or did he end up getting stuck under the current where his body couldn't resurface under some big tree limbs, rocks, things like that?
So I think kind of like in the direction you were heading, Gibbs, this information immediately caused the search teams to suspect that Brandon fell into the river. Sheriff Vizecki said that it took them 6 hours to walk 2 miles of river in the area Brandon went missing. He also noted that he walked the river by himself for the next 30 days because they believed Brandon fell into the water and would be found downstream. 30 days of searching this river to see if he, surfaced anywhere downstream.
That's dedication and commitment.
However, investigators do not currently believe Brandon fell into the river because his body was never found downstream. But that goes back to my question. I don't know, how far a body could have traveled. I'm sure they have a much better idea of it, but who knows?
And if he didn't fall in the river, where'd he go?
Well, yeah, then you have to completely shift the focus of your investigation. Annette Swanson told CNN that one bloodhound followed a scent from Brandon's car down a gravel road to an abandoned farm. This path was about 3 miles long, and it led to the river. She said the dog jumped in the water, jumped out, and walked up another gravel road before it lost the scent. Always fascinated by the scent dogs.
Oh, yeah. It's like Cool Hand Luke, those bloodhounds on that show.
Or Shawshank.
Or Shawshank, yeah.
On May 15th, the search teams moved into Lincoln County because search dogs started to focus on an area west of the county line road near fences and water. According to Lyon County Sheriff Joe Dahl, Brandon mentioned seeing fences and water over the phone, which was consistent with the area the dogs were focusing on. So, they did have some things to work with. Fences, water. Now, that meant a lot more once they found his car, because he obviously wasn't where he thought he was when he was talking to his dad on the phone.
Right.
X amount of miles from Lind, where he thought he was headed.
But at least his dad remembered the terrain and the things that he said to him, which, obviously would help the search party to go out and look for him.
Yeah. Brandon's family and the police noticed that during the 24-hour period after Brandon went missing, it seemed like his phone was still on and he just wasn't answering it. Whenever someone called him, the phone rang multiple times before it went to voicemail. If his phone was submerged in water for an extended period of time, it almost certainly would have stopped working. Lyon County Sheriff Eric Wallen said, is quoted by Inform, "I can say that his phone was functioning into the next day. You could place a call and it would ring before turning over to voicemail. That much I can say." So what does that mean? Does that unequivocally mean that he didn't fall into the water? Or does it just mean that his cell phone didn't fall into the water? If it gets damaged, is it still going to ring? Can you still leave a voicemail?
Yeah.
Or are you going to get that where, it goes straight to like some type of message that this phone is not working or not able to take voicemails? That I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either.
In 2007.
But maybe when he did fall, if he did fall in the water, his phone landed on the bank. Or maybe as he was walking, he fell in some type of well. And his phone fell out of his hand, landed on the grass, but he slipped into some type of well or hole in the ground. I don't know. I'm just thinking, how did he disappear? Not to be seen again.
I think that's the mystery that everyone is trying to solve. And, one of the things about some of these unsolved cases is you get tidbits of information. But what does that information mean? Okay, his phone was functioning into the next day. What does that mean? The fact that people were able to leave voicemails. I don't know. The initial search ended 6 days after Brandon went missing. Search teams didn't find his body or any of his belongings besides his car. At this point, everyone started to believe that Brandon wouldn't be found alive. Now, when we say everyone, I don't know if that goes for his parents. I don't think the parents start to believe that after 6 days, but you can see how maybe law enforcement starts to think, okay, 6 days is a long time. We might be looking at something much more than an adult choosing to get lost for, a period of time.
Right.
Still, search efforts continued over the following months. Over 500 volunteers, including dog handlers from different states, spent over 120 days searching for Brandon by land and air. The area of interest is about 140 square miles.
Definitely a lot of effort being put in to try to locate him.
Well, that's a pretty big area that they're searching, 140 square miles. Brandon's family was assisted by David and Linda Francis, whose son John went missing in the Sawtooth Mountains in Idaho in 2006. They started the John Francis Foundation, which helps families searching for loved ones who go missing in rural areas.
Great cause.
Great cause. I mean, I'm always amazed how, some of these individuals who lose loved ones are able to kind of funnel anger, grief, all the different emotions that they go through into helping other people. I think it's amazing. David Francis told the St. Cloud Times about the search for Brandon. He said, "I'm looking for the shit spot," basically is what he said. Now, St. Cloud Times didn't print that, but where in his walk he might have slipped into the river, an abandoned cistern or trench. I'm looking for the spot where we believe we had a mishap. And that makes a lot of sense. And he even brought up cistern, which kind of goes to your possible well theory. We are talking about a pretty rural area.
Yeah.
And you would have to think that whatever happened when he said that to his dad, the spot where it happened would be a pretty important spot if they could figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, it had to be something drastic, right? To say, oh, shit.
Yeah, right. And then for the phone to just stop working after that. Or maybe not stop working, but for him not to answer or, whatever. Brandon's parents came to believe that he became confused while he was walking around and had an accident. The police have found no evidence of foul play, but it can't be ruled out yet because his body has not been found. There's also no indication Brandon disappeared willingly. His family doesn't believe he would do this, and the fact that he called his parents and asked them to pick him up kind of discredits this theory. Yeah. And I'm never big on this theory anyway.
Right.
And, when you have no activity on people's bank accounts and things like that, it makes it tough to kind of think that's the route they chose. But here we have someone who actually makes a call to his parents right before he goes missing, asking them to come get him. Doesn't sound like a guy has a plan of disappearing on his own.
No, I don't get that at all from that conversation.
Another possibility is that Brandon was abducted or was the victim of a hit and run, but there's no evidence to support either of these theories.
I think if it was a hit and run, the dad would have heard some squealing tires.
Or a thud or something.
If someone tried to grab him, I think the dad would have heard some argument going on.
Yeah, you would think. Lincoln County Sheriff Visecki told CNN that if there was foul play, the only thing would have been if someone was in the shadows and they got him that way. I can't say there wasn't someone else there, but I can't find any evidence of it. And again, I think we also kind of have to talk about the rural area. I mean, is there someone really lying in wait out in the middle of nowhere, hoping someone comes along? I mean, we're not talking about a serial killer, stalking a neighborhood at 2-3 in the morning, or waiting for a jogger to come. We're not talking about that type of stuff. This is not New York City or a bigger type city where you're going to have a lot of foot traffic or people jogging or anything like that.
It had to be like really strange that you ended up on the property of Leatherface.
Yeah, really. Seriously, it would have to be something like that. Some believe that it's possible Brandon died of exposure or hypothermia that night, especially if he fell into the river, got out and kept walking. It was 39 degrees at the time Brandon went missing, above freezing, but that's still very cold.
But if he fell into the river, got out, started walking, and died because of the conditions of the weather, wouldn't you think they would have found him during the search? I mean, I know it's a vast area, though.
It is, but it sounds like they really concentrated on the banks of the river. So he would have had to have deviated pretty far from the river, I think, for them to have missed him. I mean, we said the one guy spent 30 days going up and down the river.
Yeah.
But let's say this is what happened. Then, that has to mean that Brandon's remains are at some unknown location, somewhere that they didn't check, or they somehow missed him in the search of that area, or possibly he's in the river and they just weren't able to find him in there. It's also possible that Brandon sought shelter in someone's outbuilding. But if that's the case, wouldn't you think that the owners would have eventually found his body and called the police?
You would think. I mean, there are some people who have outbuildings, really old outbuildings, barns that are falling down on their property that I don't even think they ever go in. So
some people keep those for like specific tax write-offs.
Right, exactly. That's why you see them with the roof caving in, but they're still standing. You're like, why? Why? But that's exactly why.
They don't use them, but...
Yeah, and they never would go into them for any reason.
Yeah.
But I also think the search party probably would have checked those out, just if it's within the radius of the car.
Well, I think that's one of the big questions, right? How close was he to his car when this moment happened where, he cursed and the phone most likely fell out of his hands or whatever it was? And if he was in the river and he got out, how far away would he have walked or been able to walk from his car?
Yeah.
See, we don't know those answers.
We just know they were on the phone for 37 minutes.
Before it happened. Yeah. So he was walking some distance from his car.
Yeah.
But I think investigators are pretty reluctant to believe this theory because his remains, his belongings have not been found despite extensive searches. And this comes up in a lot of unsolved cases where a person's body is not found and extensive searches are done. Now, we have seen where bodies have been found later in areas that were said to have been searched extensively.
We find that out a lot.
And maybe they were, it's just that they were missed. Lyon County Sheriff Joe Dahl told the St. Cloud Times in July 2008, if I had to lay any money down, I'd say we're missing him somewhere in the water. He's in an eddy somewhere being held down by a log. He's got to be here. Everything is consistent that he was walking and something happened to him. And I think that goes back to something you said earlier, right? Most of the talk was about, okay, if he fell in the water, where would he potentially wash up downstream?
Right.
And it does sound like they did a lot of searching. I don't know how much searching they actually did in the water along that route, because you would think normally a body is going to surface at some point, but not if you've got a fast moving current and let's say a body gets wedged under a log, under a big rock, or, there are some things that could happen.
It's going to stay there for who knows how long.
Now, Lincoln County Sheriff Jack Fisecki said he believed Brandon died in an accident. The Swansons were unhappy with how the police reacted when they first reported Brandon missing, so they began pushing for legislation to help the families of missing young adults. On May 7th, 2009, Governor Tim Pawlenty signed Brandon's Law, which, as reported by the Twin Cities Pioneer Press, requires authorities to respond more aggressively to reports of missing adults up to age 21 or older adults who disappear under suspicious circumstances.
Well, and this was a suspicious circumstance.
It was.
I think they probably should have jumped on it super quick.
So finally, okay, something I can get behind. Can the police check out everything? That's a tall order. There are only so many resources to go around. So, if someone calls and says, hey, my 28-year-old son was supposed to be home at 10. It's 10:15. I don't know that you get the search dogs and the helicopters 15 minutes later without any other context around it.
Right.
But like you said, there was a lot of very suspicious activity that happened before Brandon Swanson disappeared. And I think you have to take that into account. Brandon's law became effective on July 1st, 2009. According to Minnesota's Unsolved Cases, in March 2010, search dogs concentrated on an area near Mud Creek, which is a few miles northwest of the city of Porter, Minnesota. As we mentioned earlier, Brandon's car was found on the outskirts of Taunton and Porter. Another major search took place in October 2013, but it was unsuccessful. On October 17, 2015, searches for Brandon started again, focusing on farms near Porter. Search teams had been unable to check this area for years due to local farmers' harvest schedules and bad weather. This search was led by Ken Anderson from Emergency Support Services, an organization dedicated to helping search and rescue operations. They took over most of the search efforts in late 2008.
I think we've had other cases where Ken got involved.
Yeah, I believe we have. Anderson told the Twin Cities Pioneer Press that search teams were concentrating on the area northwest of Porter because search dogs were still getting the scent that says there are remains of a human in this area. Now, that's pretty interesting. Dogs are hitting on the scent of, I'm going to say human remains. I'm pretty sure they're trained to specifically search out human remains. But does that necessarily mean that it's Brandon? And I would say no. Could be. Doesn't mean it is.
Or it could be
someone else.
Yeah.
According to Ken Anderson, Brandon had the ability to walk a very long distance. And this statement implies that it's possible Brandon walked to this area from his car. And you just said it, right? He was talking to his dad for what, 30 some minutes?
Yeah.
How far can you walk in, let's say, 37 minutes?
Depends on many factors.
Not
right?
you. How far can a regular human being?
Yeah.
Not Jason Bourning it.
Right. Big difference.
Big difference. Yeah. But you're right. It does factor on terrain and the elements and all of that. But just give me a ballpark estimate. What do you think?
I mean, potentially 2 miles in that terrain.
Yeah, I would say so. Drew Evans from the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension told the Pioneer Press that since they took over the case in 2010, they had received about 90 tips about Brian and followed up on all of them. Annette Swanson told the Pioneer Press that she didn't believe Brandon would be found alive, saying, "Maybe I'm a terrible mother for this. I don't know. But I felt very early on, before the first 24 hours were up, that something terribly wrong had happened. It's a weird place to be because there's always a little glimmer of hope, but then I think that's my heart, but my mind knows it's not going to happen that way. I talked to my daughter about it this summer and I said to her, I'm not sure Brandon is going to be found in my lifetime." And she said, "Mom, I don't think he's going to be found in my lifetime."
Yeah.
So, we talk about this a lot, the hope that parents have. And she said it, right? There's always hope. But at a certain point, I think some of these individuals start to believe. And the amount of time for each individual differs. But as time passes, they start to believe that, okay, this is not good. More than likely, we're not going to find him alive if we find him at all.
Yeah. That's tough to say, but
it's intellectually honest.
Exactly.
In 2017, KSTB TV covered Brandon's case and spoke with Jeff Haas from Midwest Technical Rescue Training. Haas and volunteers have spent thousands of hours searching for Brandon in a 120 square mile area. Like Ken Anderson and his team, Haas said search dogs indicated human remains could be found in farm fields north of Porter, specifically fields on Highway 68 between Canby and Porter, about 6 miles from where his car was found. Hass gave his theory about what happened to Brandon, saying, I believe he fell, got wet, cell phone went dead. I think he continued walking. It was cold. It got down to 39 degrees. So he doesn't go on to say it, but it's pretty obvious that he believes that Brandon died of hypothermia.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very valid theory, but it still doesn't answer the question of why they haven't been able to find his body. You know, if that's the way it went down, with all the searching they've done, you would have thought that by now they would have found his body, his skeletal remains, something.
But then again, you know, if he's saying that 37 minutes into it, so let's say it's somewhere between 1.5 miles, 2 miles, he falls into the river, gets out, walks for a little bit because he's cold, continues walking through the night. I mean, he was saying this area was 6 miles away from the car.
Yeah.
That's several hours of walking that eventually he succumbs to the elements.
Yeah. When I was talking earlier about how far could you get, you know, in 37 minutes, that was kind of assuming that whatever happened to him, he didn't move on from. But if you think he fell into the water at 37 minutes, well, he'd already walked a ways. And then how far could he walk before he succumbed to the elements?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of hard to figure out.
And what direction was he going?
Right, because that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I'm assuming he was still trying to go towards what he thought was the town lights.
And we don't even know what those were.
Right.
According to Inforum, the police eventually brought in excavators to sift through the dirt to search for human remains or some of Brandon's belongings. A secret excavation operation took place in the fall of 2021. The Yellow Medicine River had dried up due to a drought, which allowed the excavation crew to go in, but they found nothing. So I think, you know, maybe that answers some of our questions, right? If there was a big drought and this river dried up,
right?
But again, how far could his body have gone? And where does this river lead to? Those are answers that I don't have.
Yeah, because sometimes you can estimate, right? That's all you can do is estimate where it might have went, but you just never know. What if you went 2 more miles down that river? Would you have found something?
And we didn't go that far.
Yeah, we didn't go that far.
Or does this river, you know, lead to another river, a bigger river? Again, I don't know the geography of this area. Ken Anderson from Emergency Support Services spoke with Inform in 2021 about some of the challenges they faced during the search operations, noting that they had faced pushback from local landowners. Okay, you've got farmers who are trying to survive. Do they want to help? I'm sure they do. But do they want their operations interrupted? No. So the team had to work with farmers to create a schedule based on planning and harvest seasons because they don't want search teams to destroy the crops that are their main source of income. And it's kind of hard to blame them. It was also said that some cattle farmers didn't want dogs on their property. Anderson told Inform, in at least a couple of circumstances, that problem is still in existence. They will not allow us on their property. We don't dispute the reason why. We try and work out a method that would make it acceptable, and we've not been able to come up with a working compromise. So, you know, this is very interesting.
Sure.
Because this could be the answer as to why, with all the searching they've done, they've not been able to find Brandon's body. You know, if he made it to one of these fields that has never been allowed to have been searched, okay, maybe that's the answer.
And at this point, I don't think by popping up some drones that you're going to be able to locate anything without being on the ground with your eyes right there.
Well, it's going to be harder now, right? So many years on. Yellow Medicine County Sheriff Bill Flatten said that most landowners are willing to work with them and that when landowners decline a search, they have no probable cause to get a warrant. As time passes, searching for Brandon's remains becomes more difficult. Inform reported that Different types of search dogs are needed to pick up on scents as they age. In 2021, Minnesota had only 3 dogs who could search for an aging scent, but the emergency support services team has brought in canines from other states. So I learned something during the research. I didn't realize that the age of the remains determines what type of dog you have to use, and they're specialized depending on how old the remains are. That's fascinating. Investigators are still receiving tips about Brandon. Some of them involve what happened before he went missing. There were claims that Brandon got into an argument that night, but the police have not confirmed this. And we said it earlier, right? Investigators cannot rule out foul play or an accident because Brandon's remains have not been found.
But again, I think if he got in an argument and somebody wanted to take him out, during that whole time his dad was on the phone with him, it would have came to the surface.
You would think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think you would have heard maybe another voice or the scuffle or something.
Or the fact that he would have said, hey, Dad, I think this person's after me.
Yeah. So I do want to go back to one theory. You know, we did kind of talk about, how much did Brandon have to drink that night? Is it possible that he took the back roads because of that? And there is a theory that people have put forth that doesn't have anything to do with Brandon being drunk, but someone else on those back roads possibly being drunk and hitting Brandon while he was walking, right?
Yeah.
Obviously couldn't have hit his car. That would have been noticeable.
Sure.
But if he's walking and this guy or woman, it could be anybody, swerves off the road, they're drunk, they hit him, and then they go, oh my gosh, what did I do? I've got to cover this up. And that's a theory that comes up in a lot of cases.
Sure. Again, I'll go back to his dad being on the phone with him. I think his dad would have heard, as you said, a thud or the tires squealing or something like that, right?
Yeah, possibly. What if the oh shit moment was him seeing the car leave the road and kind of coming towards him? He drops the phone. I don't know. The phone breaks.
Possible.
You can't take anything off the table.
No, you can't.
Someone hits him. They move his body somewhere else because they don't want to face charges. And it's not in the search area, or they get rid of it to the point where it will never be found. Brandon Swanson was last seen wearing baggy jeans, a blue striped polo shirt, a black hoodie, a white Twins baseball cap, wire-rimmed glasses, and a silver chain necklace. If you have any information about his disappearance or whereabouts, you can call the Lincoln County Sheriff at 507-694-1664. The NCMEC has released an age-progressed photo of what Brandon could look like at age 30, and you can view that on their website. It's been 15 years since Brandon disappeared. If he is still alive, he would be 34 years old. Brandon was an overall happy person who had plans for the future. I think his family, especially his mom, has come out and said they just think it's so unlikely that he just up and ran away, or that he chose to end his life. They just don't believe either one of those is a possibility.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
But outside of that, I think there are a number of theories, some more viable probably than others, but there is a ton of mystery that surrounds this case. And a lot of that mystery comes because there's so very little evidence.
Right.
You have the location of his car. You have a little bit of cell phone data. What does it mean? We don't know. Other than that, I don't know what police have to go on. And I think that's kind of evident by, the searches that they've done. It's a pretty vast area.
Yeah.
They have no way to really narrow it down. And if there was foul play involved or an accident and cover up, then they might not be searching the right area at all. And that could be the reason why his body's never been found, or somebody disposed of it in a way that because they never wanted it to be found.
Yeah, I don't know. You have all that land that hasn't been searched.
Yeah.
You know,
so that could be more of the hypothermia angle, and just help explain why his body's never been found, because he made it that far, but they've never been able to search. Now, would a farmer have seen it?
I think potentially a farmer would have, unless he went up near a fence line to lay down, or
is it possible that a big piece of farm equipment could have
maybe,
run him over? I don't want to get too gruesome about it, but
potentially,
I don't know.
Also, I think you have to look at the cistern well.
Yeah, I don't think you can discount that theory at all.
I think that's definitely something that could have happened.
Yep. But that's it for our episode on the disappearance of Brandon Swanson. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
What's up, guys? This is Dave from Texas. Just wanted to call. Listening to y'all for a couple months now. Been trying to think if I'm going to leave a voicemail or not. Anyway, I wanted to go ahead and call and leave one. Just listening to the Kristen Modafferi. So, one question about that case is, if that ad they put out said to call me, the one they think that she might have answered, the one she circled, if it said call me, didn't it have a number to call, a number to trace? What's going on with that number? I don't know. I've always got something to say about each one of the cases. Anyway, you guys are killing it, man. I'm going to keep listening. I got a lot to catch up on. Still got 140 of the unsolved to go, and then I'm going to start with the solved. Guys, just keep doing what you're doing, man. Appreciate your hard work.
Well, we appreciate you listening very much. So the trouble is when you go back that far, Gibby and I can't remember the details.
Yeah.
We just can't.
Yeah.
That case was years and years ago. I can't remember when we did it, but at first I thought he was talking about the one we just did a few weeks ago.
Right.
But Kristen Modafferi was many, many years ago. So I don't remember the details about the number that was left, or if there was a number on the ad that she circled. It's a good question, though.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Jody from Idaho, and I'm dying laughing. I just listened to the Elizabeth Gill, the little 2-year-old girl that was missing. And Gibby said acclimate or something. Acclimate. Anyway, I'm laughing. But I finished all of True Crime All the Time, all of True Crime All the Time Unsolved, and I'm having a little bit of a crisis because now I'm caught up all the way. So I might try criminology, but I kind of feel like I'm abandoning Gibby. But I'm definitely Team TCAT. You guys are amazing, and I love your podcast.
I just say just listen to them all again.
Yes. And start from the middle. Go forward, then backwards.
That seems like such a dumb plan. Why would you espouse that plan?
Start with prime numbers.
Are you trying to get acclimated to something? Because
hey, everybody needs to get acclimated.
Yeah. I don't even know what word you said. And then the word, I don't know what word you were trying to say. And I don't know what word you actually said. So I'm still pretty confused on that one as well.
It's in a dictionary somewhere.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
You're a hell of a Scrabble player.
I am.
All right. We appreciate the voicemails very much. But that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Dive into true crime on Pluto TV. Unravel the mysteries with Forensic Files and 48 Hours. Investigate crimes with Dateline 24/7 and Unsolved Mysteries. With thousands of free crime movies and TV shows, Pluto TV is the true home of crime. Download the Pluto TV app on all your favorite devices and start streaming true crime on live channels and on demand. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.